Herzlich willkommen bei Digitale Optimisten, der Podcast, der dir die vielversprechendsten Startups aus dem Silicon Valley und Gründer der nächsten Generation vorstellt. Ich bin Alex und ich spreche heute mit Owen Phillips, Gründer und CEO von Brainkey. Hast du dich schon einmal gefragt, wie dein Gehirn im Vergleich zu Elon Musk oder Albert Einstein aussieht? Wenn dich das interessiert, dann ist diese Folge perfekt für dich. Denn Owen erkundet mit seinem Start-up das größte Geheimnis des menschlichen Körpers, das Gehirn. Genauer gesagt baut er das Dashboard for your brain, mit dem jeder in einem 3D-Modell am Computer durch sein oder ihr Gehirn sozusagen schwimmen kann, um es zu erkunden. Hier schon mal ein paar Highlights aus der Folge.
One thing that really caught my attention is people were so excited to see their own brain. It's this really amazing experience to actually see your brain. Oh no, there's so many lows. Like there's just crippling self-doubt and just getting beat up. I feel like I'm talking like I'm a successful entrepreneur and I know exactly what's going to happen and we're going to be successful. But that's the way it feels. Like we feel like we're about to launch something that is going to have a huge impact and is really going to change people.
Owen hat erkannt, dass Selbstoptimierung ein riesiger Trend ist. Mal ein Beispiel. Ich habe lange nicht an die Apple Watch geglaubt, aber Apple ist mit der Apple Watch mittlerweile der größte Uhrenhersteller der Welt. Und das Killer-Feature der Watch ist nicht Siri oder Nachrichten verschicken, sondern der Schrittzähler, der Pulsmesser und die Anzeige, wie lange du gestanden hast am Tag. Kurz Selbstoptimierung. Und genau das macht Owen. Er glaubt, dass die Erkundung und Optimierung des Gehirns der nächste große Trend wird. Noch 2 Hinweise zum Inhalt. Wir sprechen unter anderem über sogenannte MRIs, das sind auf Deutsch MRTs, also Brain Scans aus der Kernspintomographie. Außerdem habe ich das Interview ganz kurz vor dem Launch von Brainkey geführt, also bevor sie ihr Produkt veröffentlicht haben. Mehr Infos findest du wie immer auf digitaleoptimisten.de/podcast/Owen. Wenn dir der Podcast gefällt, dann gib mir unbedingt 5 Sterne auf Apple Podcasts, damit mehr Menschen diese Gründergeschichten entdecken können. An das Ende dieser Folge packe ich die 3 Sachen, die ich persönlich aus dem Gespräch gelernt habe. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit Owen und mir. Hi Owen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You must be one of the smartest people I have ever talked to. Looking at your LinkedIn page, I see that you have a Bachelor in Biology from UCLA, PhD in Neuroscience in Rome, one of my favorite cities.
Yeah, that's amazing. So love it.
Postdoc in Stanford in business, working in neuroscience, and now CEO of a startup in Y-Combinator. My first question, how do you do it?
I don't know, it doesn't feel like I've accomplished much or I have so much more to do to build a company. So at this moment, I just feel this intense anxiety to keep building, to keep doing something. So I don't look on this as some accomplishment. It looks what's coming next.
Maybe you can walk us through your CV just a bit. What got you into biology, neuroscience? How did that play out in real time for you?
Yeah, I've always been interested in science. That has been just a driving force for me. Since I was a little kid, I've been collecting bugs and butterflies, and I had a microscope from a super early age. Joined UCLA. That's just an amazing school. I was part of the biology department there. After that, I actually joined a neuroscience lab, and I was there for a long time, which was just this fascinating lab of intersection of neuroimaging, computation. We actually had a wet lab there too. Just these amazing people. It's just an incredible environment. And then I went from there to Europe. And I actually worked in Europe for about 3 years. Actually was there 3.5 years. That was just an incredible time. I got to be immersed in a hospital in Europe. I have these connections from all over the place. It's just Rome is this amazing place where you've got all these expats that will come And they're looking to just make friends and meet people and have this vibrant environment. And so I was able to get into that. And now I've got connections in Berlin. So I collaborate on this anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis project with this great team in Berlin.
I have no idea what that means.
No,
it's
an autoimmune disorder that looks very similar to schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly fascinating. I think it's the connection between the immune system and psychiatric disorders is just going to be uncovered so much in the next 10 years. And we're just kind of touching the surface of that. And so that's just fascinating work that's really happening in Germany. I also work with groups in Italy, of course, and then France, which has just been amazing. So when I came back to the Bay Area and went to Stanford for my postdoc, there's actually a France-Stanford Institute at Stanford. So the French government partially funds this institute, which will give grants to people like me to go to France and work with groups there. Also funds French people to come to Stanford. So it's this, I don't know, I love the organization so much because they awarded me a grant. I got to go to Toulouse for about 3 months. So with that, I just built up this whole network in France as well. So I've kind of been jumping back and forth between France and Stanford for the last 2 years and just getting this whole engagement with all these different people, all these different ideas. And in neuroscience, I don't know, it just feels like the last 10 years are just blown by because so much is happening. Every year there's new stuff coming out, there's new ways we think about the brain, there's new technology to uncover it. So it's just, I don't know, I love it. It's an amazing time.
Wow. I can see your eyes light up at 2 points when you talk about Rome and France and when you talk about neuroscience. So I guess that's was there any magical moment that got you into biology and neuroscience? You said you played with bugs. Was there anything in your past that you thought, this is the path I have to take?
No, it's just when you would, when I had introductory biology classes, you're such a high-level overview. It's fascinating, and then you learn about the cell, which is interesting. Then you learn about psychology, and that is maybe there's less hard science there, and just kind of blending that was really what drove me into kind of neurobiology and biology with kind of a neuroscience bent to it. And then even back in high school, I was into programming and building out websites. I built out a website for my basketball team, and so kind of combining these two was this just really nice opportunity to get into something like the human brain. I guess the biggest point about the human brain that always caught my attention was it's what we know so little about. So it was this opportunity to study something really we don't know very much about, and there's so many problems that haven't been addressed because we don't know about the brain yet. So it just seems like this, I think for our age and generation, it's kind of like space exploration. It's this uncovered landscape that you can really dive into and kind of find your home in and uncover. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have to come back to your CV, right? Because one question popped up is, you did all these amazing things. Was there ever a time where you felt, I'm not sure what to do next?
I don't know how to answer that, because there's always, when you're in research and academia, you're not just, at least I wasn't just writing one research paper. You usually got 3 or 4 going on, and they're in different paths of the publication process, and they could be getting reviewed, or you're getting rejected, or you're getting comments back, and you're always working on what's next. So you never really stop to, or at least I never stopped to think what's next. I just kept running with the research for a long time, and that actually gets tiring at some point, or I was looking for something new. So it wasn't me wanting to jump into the next project and the next research kind of race. That's kind of what led me to business is, well, we're always looking for the next thing, the next research item, the next part of the brain to explore, the next way to dive into it. The problem with that is I was never taking any of my research and applying it to problems people actually had in the real world. So that's was the big jump for me to really want to get into, is take what's happening in research, and there's so much of it, it's just exploding. You can't even really take it in as a single individual anymore, but take that and bring it to the real world where people can actually do something with that.
This is basically the perfect segue to talk about Brainkey, right? So you have two flavors in your life. One is the passion for neuroscience. The other one, you did a postdoc, you did an MBA in Stanford, I think.
No, I did a Stanford Ignite program, which is a business program. It's kind of a mini MBA. It's a evening program or like a summer program, and they bring a ton of scientists and postdocs from Stanford along with other like outside business people together, and then you work on a project, and it's kind of like a mini startup boot camp.
Wow.
All at Stanford. And that, I love the program so much because it brought somebody like me who's from, science and academia, has never really done business, and it brought me into like the business school. So I was exposed to all these GSB, the business school at Stanford, professors who were just so great and encouraging, and I also met all these MBA students at the business school, which has just been this amazing resource once I got tapped into this business community. So I didn't do an MBA at Stanford. I was part of this program, but this program was such a gateway for me from science into business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's kind of shift the conversation to Brainkey, right?
Yep.
Your passion project or your startup. And there is a widespread myth out there that we only use 10% of our brain. So let me kick it off with, will Brainkey make me use the full 100% of my brain?
I think we're already using most of our brain all the time. So that's the easiest one. I hope Brainkey can actually teach people more about their brain so that they can really understand it for themselves. And when they hear things like you only use 10% of their brain, they can actually be like, I actually know better. Like, I understand my brain a little more than that. So, no, you do use more than 10% of your brain.
Got it. Sounds good. So let's kind of kick it off. What does Brainkey actually do? What is your one sentence or one paragraph pitch?
Yeah, so it's a personal brain dashboard. So it's a way for an individual to understand their own brain. And the way we do that is we take brain MRI data and we create a brain visualization for people. So it's a cloud-based visualization. So they can look at their brain, they can navigate through it. We map the brain, we tell them some things about it. And then in the long term, we're starting to build out more and more features of what things you can understand from your brain from this kind of brain dashboard.
Mm-hmm. So I have an MRI, and I could say I have an MRI, and I can upload the image to your servers. You're going to visualize it, and I can swim through my brain and explore it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so you can swim through your brain and explore it. That's a nice way of putting it.
Okay.
What's really amazing is when I was at universities like Stanford and UCLA, we would run these big research studies, and we would scan people with our MRI technology. And you'd bring the research subjects out of the scanner, and maybe you'd show them their brain on these consoles just outside the scanner. And one thing that really caught my attention is people were so excited to see their own brain. It's this really amazing experience to actually see your brain, not just like some random brain scrolling through the TV or on the internet, but seeing your own brain is a very amazing experience. So that's partly what Brainkey is about, is bringing this amazing technology directly to an individual person.
So I'm going to ask you a bunch of rookie questions because obviously I have nothing to do with neuroscience. But how does my brain differ from anyone else's brain?
Oh yeah, so the brain is similar to like a human body in that there's a basic structure that pretty much everybody has. You can have variations on that basic structure, but everybody has a unique brain. It's going to be roughly the same shape with a lot of the same cortical folding and a lot of the same connections inside, but those connections are unique to you. Those folds are unique to you. That shape is unique to you. What makes you you is unique to you. So there's just so much there that is independent for you. It's your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it a bit like a fingerprint?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's kind of everybody's got their unique brain. Everybody's got their unique fingerprint.
imagine I upload my MRI, I use your service, and I explore my brain in the dashboard. What are you also telling people, your customers, that there might be some irregularities, or are you a genius, or something that is not developed? What do people get out of looking at their brain?
So at the easiest, like the most basic point they get is a really nice visualization, a way to interact with their brain scan themselves. And the big problem there, that what is being solved, is when you get an MRI today, most people we've talked to never get to look at that brain scan, let alone get to interact with it, let alone get a 3D visualization or get their brain mapped to identify specific areas of it. So that's the immediate thing we do. In terms of abnormalities, we're not a diagnostic tool. We're not like a clinical medicine tool. So we're not looking for those things. We're not making that call. Like, that's something that still needs to be done by a medical professional. Like, we are developing, really nice AI that does a ton of things and can uncover a lot of interesting things about your scan, but we're not doing diagnostic or looking for abnormalities.
Got it. And what are those things that you're working on? So if I let the AI, the algorithm, run over my folds in the brain, the cortex, whatever it's called, what are things that I could find out about myself?
So we're looking to build those out. So we're like just talking with people what they're into. Like, I have these ideas of what I think people should be into, but we're so early, we're just trying to figure out what people want. I was just talking to one of my best friends who wants to see what his brain looks like compared to Elon Musk. Like, I had no idea anybody would want to see something like that, but that's a theme that comes up. People are interested how they look or how they compare to other people, what their brain would. They would just like to see other people's brains. They'd like to see their brain. They'd like to know what's the difference. So there's a lot of things there we could potentially look into. We're exploring all these different ideas, so we're super open to what people are interested in.
Well, I can tell you, I can see a lot of use cases for that kind of things. I mean, when you look at startups that have grown very successfully, like 23andMe or other startups that kind of focus on self-optimization, it's proven that there's a market out there for these kinds of things, for genetics or for fitness.
Yeah.
I think there are other ones that even analyze all the parts of your body, like feces. You can send them in. I forgot the name now. Wow. But I mean, there's tons of stuff. So are you kind of tapping into this optimization trend?
I think so. That's not what we initially thought we were tapping into. But it's something that is so obvious, an extension of what we do, that we talk with a lot of people, and that's really what they're interested in. They want to know what they can do next to improve their brain. So I think we will build these tools out. We will build out this kind of optimized self version. There's a lot we can do there, and there's so much people want to do to improve themselves and their brain, so we want to work on that. I mean, that is a bit of a problem for us, is that there are so many things you can look into, and there's so many directions you can take an early stage startup. So figuring out exactly where to take it and what things to do, how your brain stacks up compared to other people would be interesting. It's a little scary too. So I'm not sure what exactly we will do there. So we're talking with a lot of people trying to figure that out. That kind of segues into that. One thing I've learned so much that is helpful in a startup is talking to people and finding out what they want, not just figuring out what you want and what you want to build, but talking with people and finding out what is helpful to them.
So finding product market fit, right, as the main discipline of your day-to-day work. How do you do it? I mean, how do you approach people to test where you want to take this company? It's
been very easy for us because people are just so interested in the brain. Everybody is just interested in themselves, and your brain is a lot, it's a large part of who you are. So people have been very open to talk to us and to give us their thoughts about what we should be building, what they want to see. And so it's more of just taking the time out of our day from, developing to actually talk to people and kind of run these ideas and our new features by them to see what they respond to.
And how do you find these people?
Just in our communities. And then we've been running some test Facebook ads and having people join our wait list. And then we reach out to them directly on our wait list and have conversations with them. So we've had conversations with people in Idaho. We had one this morning with a guy from Florida. We talked to people in Canada and Europe, of course. And we have a call with the guy from China tomorrow. So it's just amazing, right? You can reach this huge network of people so easily now. So that's how we've been really finding this wide network.
Interesting. And do you have like an early indication of what the use case is going to be?
Yeah, it's a really strong signal so a lot of MRIs are done all over the world. Surprising number are done in the US. The estimates we've seen are around 10 million a year, maybe 9 million. I kind of think it might actually be higher than that because we run into just so many people that have had a brain MRI scan. And these people just have this data, but they've never been able to interact with it themselves. And they want to. This is something they, kind of almost invested in to get, but then they were never allowed to do anything with themselves. So that's where we're seeing this really strong need is people want to be able to do something with their brain scan. They want to see their brain. They want to interact with it. They want to have some control. They want to be able to kind of help themselves understand their own brain. And one of the frustrations we've seen is they haven't been able to do that. And that's where we see our kind of opportunity to come in and help people.
From a maybe biological side, I mean, when the doctor does the MRI, she does it to understand what's going on in the brain, maybe there are some abnormalities, and could you detect those with, so for example, if I had Alzheimer's or some early indications, are there early biological signs in the brain of these kinds of disease?
We are not looking for those things. There's whole bodies of research, neuroscience research that even I used to do that indicates that you can spot a lot of these abnormalities early in the course of a disease. We're not looking for that. We're looking for things to help inform the consumer, to help people out in their journey to understand their brain more. But that's really, really interesting because there is just so much we don't know about even diagnosing things like Alzheimer's or uncovering, pathways of mental illness. So there's so many potential ways we could go in the future to really start helping people more and more. In the short term, we're not looking for those things. We're just looking to give you more information about yourself.
Is there any, you said that you're not focused on the diagnostic side of things, but do you still have to work with regulatory in some way?
So we've had a lot of conversations, or not a lot, but a few conversations with the FDA, and we've been at presentations with the FDA. One thing that's been so cool is the FDA is, well, one, it's this body that's just so overworked and underfunded, and they're seeing this explosion in digital health and AI companies. But what they've been doing the past year or two is really focused on engagement and reaching out to startups and looking for feedback from the community to try to build these new rules into understanding these companies and how they can be helpful, how the industry can kind of go back and forth. So it's been amazing to kind of see that, and hopefully we're part of that. We've actually contributed, our own thoughts to this whole understanding of how AI is going to contribute or be regulated in the future. So it's really interesting time for the FDA.
How do you see the general landscape of startups in healthcare? Are there many startups that maybe also work on the diagnostic side, but generally do similar things like you, applying big data and artificial intelligence to healthcare questions? Yeah,
there's a huge explosion it seems like all of my friends from Stanford now have like AI startups for like diagnostics, or there's just so much more you can do to handle huge amounts of data, and there's lots of opportunity to help out in medicine. So we see this huge explosion happening there. The thing I'm so interested in is this connection to the consumer directly about their healthcare. So in the past, you go to a doctor, they give you all the information. You don't really get much back. You just kind of get their help, and then that's kind of the end of the journey. But what I see more and more, and what we want to be part of, is this engagement directly with the, I guess in this case is the customer, and the individual person will get to understand their health themselves and get to learn more and more about it, get to understand what's happening to their bodies, and be part of the conversation. And that's what I'm so fascinated about. We are seeing these new APIs that Google and Apple and other big companies are starting to support, which will link healthcare data across all these different hospitals and different providers, which has in the past just been so siloed up, and now it's getting more and more, very slowly progressing to making it more of a standardized platform so data can be shared across these. And what we see this happening, or what this is going to develop, is this landscape where you can do more with data, but it also gives the individual consumer more power to do things with their data. And we want to be part of that.
I want to kind of talk a bit more about the customers. And I recognize that you're early stage, you can basically take this idea anywhere, right? There's probably value for doctors, for healthcare providers, also for the end customer. But in your head, when you think about taking the next step or building out a feature or a use case, what is the person that you have in mind?
Yeah, we have our customer is this hybrid of two people we actually know. So we call her Louisabelle. Both of them have had a brain MRI scan in the past, and both were never shown their MRI data. Both have questions about it, and they want to understand more about themselves. So that's who we see as kind of our ideal, like, early adopter customer. You've got to understand we haven't even launched publicly. We don't actually have a customer. Nobody's paid us anything. So we're still figuring this out, but we have this ideal customer in our mind of this person who does have an MRI and is interested in learning more about it.
So I know it's early stage, but have you already thought about a business model of how to generate revenue with this idea?
The way this works as a business side is that a user would come to our site, they would take their MRI data and they would upload it to our site. And we would give them this brain dashboard that they could map their brain and visualize it and play with it in 3D and learn things about their brain. We charge them a fee for doing so. That's how we make money as a business. So it's a similar model to, I guess, things like 23andMe, where you have this service and then you give an analysis or something back to the customer, and then in response they pay you for it. I think it's hard to talk about on a podcast, but one thing we've been playing with is all these fun things you can also build onto it that are a bit gimmicky. Like Alex and I were just looking at a 3D printed brain in our office a few minutes ago, which is kind of funny to actually see, right? Mm-hmm. But we've been talking with people, and people like that. It's cool to actually see a 3D printed brain. It's cool to have your own 3D printed brain. Mm-hmm. This isn't our main business model, but it's the kind of things you can start adding on and get more customer engagement. So we're playing around with things like that in the future. Sounds
fascinating. Yeah, I might be in the market for having my brain 3D printed. So I think I understood the idea and what you're thinking about, but now that you got into Y-Combinator a couple of weeks ago, I believe, what is your biggest priority when you wake up? What are you most focused on at the moment?
We've been just so heads down the last few weeks or so, a month or so, just developing like crazy, trying to get this product live. So just this huge push to get what is just been a concept and just been us talking about and us fundraising and talking to people about and making something that's out there that people can give us real feedback on, a real product in the real world, not just something that's a PowerPoint presentation, that's a pitch deck, but that's there and real, that people can beat up on and really break and have it fall apart, and then we make it even better. So that's what we're looking to do, is get something out in the real world immediate. Well, hopefully we're launching this week, so we'll see how that goes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, founding a company has a lot of ups and downs, right? And especially in your phase when you're still working out the product, kind of nailing it, to have someone give feedback on.
Yeah.
What was the last time when you had the feeling, oh God, what am I doing? And when was the last time you thought, this is fantastic, this is the next big thing?
So I've been out of Stanford since last January. It's been like a year and something, and I've just loved pretty much every minute of this startup thing. I haven't thought, oh God, what am I doing? Before we got our initial funding from actually Amino Capital, which is this fund that has an office just outside of Stanford on University Avenue, I was blowing through savings. I was working in Starbucks all the time, actually in Palo Alto and then Los Altos. And even then, I loved what I was doing. I loved what we were building, and it was fun and it was exciting. And there's just so much you can do with AI now to understand imaging data, and there's so much you don't know about the brain right now. So I never felt like we couldn't make something incredible by pursuing this. We're just at the cusp of too many technologies coming together and too much, human interest coming together to not build something interesting. So I never stopped on that. Oh no, there's so many lows. There's just crippling self-doubt and just getting beat up. People telling you it's not a business. It's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. I have no idea why you're doing this. You're constantly dealing with people thinking it's not a good idea, or it's a good idea, but I'm not interested in it, or I'm not interested enough. What's been so reassuring for us is to actually talk with people. So not just investors or not just, professors, but get outside these little bubbles around here and talk to people like in Iowa. And then we get responses like, we've been searching for something like you. I've been looking for something like you. Is just such a nice feeling, and it makes you want to keep going. So that's been the biggest way to kind of get rid of this doubt, is to actually get outside of our little bubble and talk with real people and find out what they need. And if you're actually building something for what people want, that just drives you to keep going. I feel like I'm talking like I'm a successful entrepreneur, and I know exactly what's going to happen and we're going to be successful. But that's the way it feels. We feel like we're about to launch something that is going to have a huge impact and is really going to change people and just change the way we perceive how we interact with our own medical data. We think is just such a big change in kind of our interaction with healthcare, and we think we're part of that. So I'm going to be just fascinated to look back on this in a few years and see how we've been able to do that, how we've been able to kind of meet our goals. So
one thing that I find particularly interesting is, getting these brain images, these MRI scans, having the data. Are there any concerns when it comes to PII, personally identifiable information about the brain, and giving it to a private company that you've encountered?
Yeah, no, people should be concerned about that. I think that's a big responsibility on us. for anybody dealing with healthcare, you should be extremely careful with it and take very good care of it. So that's a really big aspect for us. For example, my fiance is from Germany, and we work with universities in Europe and other things, and we talk about GDPR a lot. GDPR is really a great thing, and you need to give all this control back to the users, back to real people. And that's really what we're building towards, is to be compliant with GDPR and be as much control, much consent is all given back to the individual user.
I mean, you worked in France, in Italy, so would you have a harder time doing what you do in Europe?
We don't know yet. I don't know the answer to that question. So we're based here, but I have a mentor and advisor in France. We have advisors in Germany as well. We want to be in Europe as well. The GDPR requirements, we're a startup. Nobody fully has the full grasp on it right now. We have access to an amazing lawyer at Cooley, which is a high-profile international law firm. For us to go to them and get advice on GDPR and do exactly what we need to do to be fully legally on every single requirement is exceedingly expensive, and nobody really has all the answers yet. We're talking to other people in other groups, and they're figuring out GDPR, and the law firms are figuring out all these different constraints. So it's this really interesting time where people want to understand these things, but nobody has the full guidelines on what is the best way to move forward. So that's why we work to be really engaged with our potential customers, and we try to be super clear about everything, because we want to understand this environment and just make sure everybody is totally clear on what they're getting into.
But that means you're building for the world, right? Maybe you could make it even easier for you, saying we're just going to build it for the American market where GDPR doesn't apply.
Yeah.
But you take GDPR and try to bake it into your solution already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the U.S. is going in the direction of GDPR. California's got a similar law that will likely come into effect within a few years. So that, I think, is where people should be going anyway. So we are a new startup, so why not just build it in? The worldwide aspect is a big one too, is because I've lived abroad. I've lived in Canada. I've lived in Europe. Our friends are from all over the world. So it just makes sense for us to build a tool that is for everybody. Just building it for the US market, it makes sense, and that's what we're doing. But we're also building it for everybody. We don't just build it for like one tiny group. We hope we can be useful to everybody all over.
Still, I mean, you've been all over the world, but you still decided to found your startup here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I guess it might be, is the environment easier here for healthcare startups, or why did you decide to found it here? Yeah,
I talk to my fiance a lot about this, and when I'm in France, we talk a lot about this as well. It's a really hot topic, because everywhere people want to build the next Silicon Valley. And you've got like mini ones that are happening, like in Tübingen near Stuttgart, there's kind of like a mini Silicon Valley there. And then in France, they're building out all these like innovation hubs in Marseille and Toulouse, and Paris, of course, has a nice startup scene going. I was at a roundtable discussion with the German economics and energy minister at UC Berkeley a few weeks ago, and had these amazingly sophisticated Germans in very nice suits asking a panel, and me included, about the startup scene and why there's more startups in the Bay Area than there is in Germany. One thing I've seen here is actually in Y-Combinator, this is kind of a little known, or a widely known secret, is that about 75% of the companies formed in Y-Combinator are actually international teams. So you've got groups of people coming from all over the world here to form companies, to be part of this ecosystem. And you can't do that in Toulouse. Not yet. Hopefully they built it up, and hopefully we can contribute to building that up. But having these resources to talk to people who've been through this process is something that's just invaluable and is just amazing. At the earliest stage, the encouragement to keep you going is so nice when you see so many people around you that have done it. And it's so weird to meet people that are crazy successful. They built billion-dollar companies, and then you're like having lunch with them, and they're just like you. They're not like a crazy genius or something, they're just like, oh, that's like my buddy, that's Alex, but he just built this incredible company, so I could do it too. That is just such a nice feeling here. People are not ripping you down to build a startup, they're building you up.
So, you talked about Tübingen and Stuttgart, two German cities.
You say that so much nicer than me.
I guess so. How do you see the healthcare startup scene in Germany? Are there any notable companies that you know of?
I don't have a good answer to that. What I do see is in Tübingen is a really vibrant city full of a lot of young, very smart people that are coming together to build amazing things. In that city in particular, you've got, I think Amazon has a new big office there. You've got the Max Planck, which is just fantastic. There's amazing neuroscience research going on there. So you've got these hubs that are really trying to build startups. I just wish there was more capital to get them started. Not just like late stage capital, like let's throw money at this company that's a Series D. Like, no, let's put money in seed funding to allow these people just to get going. Like a little seed money goes so far, and that is what I see as the hardest for people to get, is just this initial first baby step is so hard in Europe. It's supposedly getting actually harder in the US. There's more funding that is going in the later stage directions and less into the early stage. But I think that is the biggest one, is if you could just get more money in the early stage. There's so many talented people in Europe. The number of PhDs I meet in Europe is just incredible that are they could be doing a lot more if they were given a little opportunity and a little starting funding.
It's interesting. You remind me. I kind of remember the MP3 format, the audio format. It was invented in Germany, but kind of a German company didn't make a lot of money with it. I think even in the Max Planck Institute, I'm not sure if it was there, but other companies ran with it, got seed funding, and actually kind of made a ton of money off that format.
Yeah.
So that might be going the same alley.
When I was in this conversation with the finance minister, they kept talking about like, how do we build like innovation in Germany? But the way they were phrasing it, the way they were talking about it was, how do we build innovation into existing companies? So how do we take Mercedes or BMW and build like innovation so they can be the next self-driving car leaders? I felt like I just needed to yell out, like, don't try to build innovation in these giant companies. Like, just give a little boost to these people outside of these companies and let them build the next Google. Let them build the next like company that's marketing, like controlling MP3s or is helping self-driving cars get out there. That is the big difference I see in a lot of economies outside of the US, is there's a lot of work that goes into making sure their existing infrastructure stays, the existing infrastructure. They don't try to disrupt the existing infrastructure, and that is a nice place where the US kind of sits, is you're always looking to kind of tear down what's existing. And I wish there was more of kind of that mindset in Europe. I would say that Europe is just so nice, though, most of the time, and for most places. So maybe not having all this change and disruption is a very good thing.
I really like the point you made on having role models that you talk to. I imagine talking to people that graduated from Y-Combinator, that built these companies. I can totally see that makes a huge difference, as opposed to talking to people who might have had a long career in business that have not had that startup experience. And I agree with you. It's much more encouraged here in a way to take risks and to explore the possibilities. Cool. Well, we talked about your path from your bachelor in biology now to being a founder. We got to know Brainkey, your mission of visualizing the brain, giving people access to this kind of mysterious part that people know so little about. We talked a bit about Germany and neuroscience, the German startup scene. So all that's left for me is to ask you one question that I ask to all my guests, is what is the best advice you've ever received?
I don't have an answer for it. One thing I've done is ask people for advice all the time. And I'm sure somebody told me that, and that's the best advice I've ever gotten. There's no one piece of advice that fits everything. Maybe that's something you need to have to do a startup, is flexibility and adaptability, because it's always changing. You're in a changing environment. You're building something that's changing. So you need to always be asking people and talking to people and getting advice. So I can't assign who told me that, but just always getting advice, and as much of it as you can, has just been incredibly valuable.
And how do you pick the people that you want advice from?
So I have some very distinguished people I really look up to that have been incredibly helpful, and I value their advice. I also value, like this lady I talked to in Iowa, she had incredible advice for us, actually more practical advice for building, what she needed. And she was very eager to give this advice. So I feel like the easy answer would be search out amazingly talented people that are super successful and talk with them. Do that for sure, but also just talk with anyone and see what they have to say, because the next piece of advice could really, drive you forward or give you this new feature that you never knew you needed to build until you talk to that person.
Owen, I wish you all the best for the startup, and thank you for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So, hier ist wieder Alex mit meinen 3 Learnings aus dem Gespräch. Erstens, Smart Health wird riesig, weil es die 1:1 Beziehung von Patient und Arzt ergänzen kann, es auch ein bisschen entzaubert, aber auch verbessern kann. Wenn ich beim Arzt bin, dann fühle ich mich manchmal ziemlich klein und ehrlich gesagt ahnungslos, weil ich halt überhaupt keine Ahnung von Medizin habe, und manchmal fühle ich mich auch ein bisschen abgespeist. Mit Brainkey möchte Owen das Arzt-Patienten-Verhältnis ein bisschen mehr auf Augenhöhe bringen, indem er schlaue Anwendungen baut, die jedem Laien das Gehirn einfach erklären. Neben Brainkey arbeiten Startups auf der ganzen Welt und natürlich auch hier im Silicon Valley an solchen Technologien, zum Beispiel Brustkrebs- oder Hautkrebsfrüherkennung durch maschinelles Lernen und künstliche Intelligenz. Es ist völlig klar, dass viel mehr solcher Startups in den nächsten Jahren in den Markt drängen und großen Erfolg haben werden. Zweitens, es muss nicht immer der klassische Produktmanagement-Ansatz sein. Im Entwickeln und Leiten von Tech-Produkten gibt es normalerweise einen zentralen Grundsatz. Verstehe erstmal den Kunden und baue und entwickle das Produkt, das den größtmöglichen Kundennutzen hat. Owen macht das mit Brainkey irgendwie so, aber dann doch irgendwie auch wieder nicht. Er erzählt zwar, dass er das direkte Kundenfeedback jeden Tag sucht, gleichzeitig aber hat er auch schon eine Lösung entwickelt und sucht jetzt das perfekte Consumer-Produkt für seine Technologie. Zum Beispiel, wir haben über 3D-gedruckte Gehirne gesprochen, ein Dashboard für das Gehirn und vieles mehr. Er hat damit Erfolg, also vielleicht gibt es auch mehr als die reine Lehre. Drittens, Tübingen und Stuttgart sind anscheinend Mini-Silicon Valleys. Ich will den Städten überhaupt kein Unrecht tun, aber das war mir bisher neu. Interessant fand ich, wie begeistert Owen von Europa und den klugen Leuten hier ist, aber er gleichzeitig einen riesigen Unterschied zur Startup-Kultur im Silicon Valley sieht. Owen hat vor kurzem mit dem deutschen Finanzminister gesprochen, der die ganze Zeit gefragt hat, wie er deutsche Großkonzerne wie Daimler und BMW innovativer machen kann. Owen glaubt, dass echte Disruption nur in Startups entstehen kann, und deshalb glaubt er, wir brauchen viel mehr Seed-Funding in Deutschland. So, das war's. Ich hoffe, dir hat die Folge gefallen. Gib mir gerne 5 Sterne bei Apple Podcasts und schreib mir eine Bewertung, damit ich mehr Menschen erreichen kann. Mehr Infos findest du wie immer auf digitaleoptimisten.de. Bis zum nächsten Mal.